The speculation will never end between Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. And now we're going to break down what new information we have and what is bullshit and what is not. We'll do it right now on this episode of Heat Digest. Now, if you don't know, there has been a never-ending amount of speculation surrounding Jimmy Butler and this Miami Heat team, basically ever since the first day of our what was considered offseason. The day after we got eliminated, Jimmy Butler came out and made what was known as a demand, or looked at as a demand, for his next contract extension that he wanted from the Miami Heat. Obviously, that window has not opened up yet, so no one has stepped forward. No steps have been taken forward in order to make this process go. So, obviously, that hasn't started yet. But again, the speculation between the two parties in Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat organization has not died down in the slightest, as it just never ends. NBA Central posted this 3 days ago on May 24th, saying there are rumblings that Miami could be open to parting ways with Jimmy Butler rather than extending him, per Basketball Talk, which is Kurt Helin on Twitter. It goes on to say, and I quote, "Despite what Pat Riley said at his press conference, there are rumblings that Miami could be open to parting ways with Jimmy Butler rather than extending him. Reuniting Butler and Joel Embiid could work, something Fisher mentions at Yahoo Sports." Remember that name. Remember that name for just a second. He also notes DeMar DeRozan is a free agent, but that's not an ideal fit. Now, that is the end of the quote. The quote did not attach remembering Fisher's name. I myself am telling you that for the next article we are going to break down in just a minute. But again, this is, again, a quote from Kurt Helin, who wrote an article, and if you click on the link below the quote that we just read, it then takes you to an article that opens up with this. This is literally the top line before any of the actual structure of the article is written. It says, "This is the NBA silly season." Now, it is simply silly. It is silly, to say the least, the way these articles are being written, the way these articles and quotes are being displayed. Because look at the actual quote from the article, that rather than the quote that we've just read from NBA Central. Okay, I'm going to read this one, and let me know if you notice anything different that would be known as pretty substantial weight in an article. "Despite what Pat Riley said at his press conference, there are rumblings from other teams that Miami could be open to parting ways with Jimmy Butler rather than extending him." And then in parentheses, "although he most likely stays," end of parenthesis, reuniting Butler and Joel Embiid could work, something Fisher mentions at Yahoo Sports. He also notes DeMar DeRozan is a free agent, but that's not an ideal fit. Okay, so leaving out that other teams, there's rumblings from other teams that Miami could be parting ways, as well as saying, although he most likely stays, when referring to Jimmy Butler in a contract extension and not getting it yet because the window hasn't opened for that contract extension to be given to him. I think those are pretty vital pieces of information that NBA Central did leave out in the quote they put out on their tweet. I'm just saying NBA Central has been a great source for not only Miami Heat news, but basketball news for the entire NBA in general, not only in the offseason, but the entire season, all season long. But again, I think they kind of messed up here, leaving out those two vital pieces of information when paraphrasing this quote from Kurt Helin from the article he wrote that we just cited. But it doesn't end there, as we have more information, more articles to cite, starting with, where are we? Right here. Report suggests Jimmy Butler likely to remain with Miami Heat. This is, again, from May 24th, written by Chandel Richardson. And in this article, she also quotes Jake Fisher, who, again, I told you guys to remember the name, same name. And I quote, "A far murkier dynamic is that of Jimmy Butler, who's extension eligible in Miami," end of quote, wrote Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports, going on to say, and I quote, "The Sixers, of course, have been in the Butler business before. He and Embiid maintained a close relationship, and Butler may have been the all-star whom Morey most often attempted to acquire in Houston," sources said. At this juncture, however, the league executives are of the mind Butler will most likely remain with the Heat, end of quote. Now, just massive bombshell after massive bombshell. It feels like it felt like when Butler and Pat Riley had this, I'm not going to call it dispute because it wasn't really a dispute. It was just Jimmy said something the night prior. Pat Riley came out in his postseason press conference and he hit the nail on the head. He just called it the way he saw it. He addressed the situation, and that's who Pat Riley is. He's the Godfather. You're not going to tell him to be quiet. He's going to call it the way he sees it, and you're going to listen, or you're not going to be a part of his organization. And honestly, we haven't seen Jimmy Butler push back on anything that Pat Riley has said, nor has Jimmy Butler's agent. They've actually said the opposite. They've said they're a part of the same, they've cut from the same cloth was the exact quote, to be honest with you. In this article, obviously, Pat Riley says Jimmy Butler should have kept his, and I quote, mouth shut, end of quote, about Heat versus Celtics addresses potential trade. Obviously, this was the breaking headline after the postseason press conference held by Pat Riley. But once again, after that, we saw Jimmy Butler's agent come out and say, or really praise Pat Riley and the mentality of the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley and how things are so well put together here in Miami and how Pat Riley at the helm, he doesn't take any shit. And they want to be winners. They are winners, and because of that, they acknowledge the fact that they're cut from the same cloth. They're tough people. They're tough-skinned people. They're not gonna they're not gonna be upset that you got called out. Was Jimmy supposed to say that? No. Is it cool that he did say it? Yeah, in a way, in the sense that he's confident in his abilities. When he's on the floor, he doesn't think there's a person or a team alive that can beat the team he's on. And we love that confidence. But again, like Pat Riley said, if you're not on the floor, whether it's because you're healthy or you're unhealthy or whatever the reason is, don't come out here and talk like you're healthy, like you had a chance. We have to live in reality. We cannot live in a fake reality where we just, if this happened, we would have won. Or if all these hypothetical statements, all these hypothetical situations, that's not reality. We can't live on that. So again, that's what Pat Riley was really saying with his quote when he told him to keep his mouth shut. Again, we've already discussed that. I will jump back to this article that we were breaking down earlier, written by Kurt Helin, as he goes on to say, and I quote, well, the Sixers think that there's a real chance they end up with Paul George. From my understanding, talking with people around the league, they think that there's a real chance he ends up leaving. No guarantees, but there's a chance of it, end of quote. Now, I know I'm jumping all over the place, but again, to really just to circle everything around, Philly was, it seems like at least, Philly would want to land someone like Jimmy Butler-esque type of Paul George, okay? Paul George, Jimmy Butler, they're very, very similar in the sense that they are a taller shooting guard / small forward type of players. They even have the ability to play the forward. Obviously, neither of them play the power forward position. I understand this. They just have good size to their frame. They have great length. They're great defenders. They're one of the two of the better wing defenders in the entire league. Obviously, they're good defenders throughout the entire floor, and if the opposing team runs a small lineup, both of these guys are more than capable of defending a power forward, depending on the play style, obviously. But once again, they are great wing defenders with great offensive abilities, and if the Philadelphia 76ers were able to go out and land someone like a Paul George, everyone is fully under the impression that he will be out in LA, out of the Clipper Stadium, because they have such a high payroll already. They have to clear some space. They're going into a new stadium. They want to be revamped. They want to be real fresh. And last year, they really didn't get the job done, especially Paul George, as they did get bounced to the Dallas Mavericks, and they didn't even make it to the second round. So it's going to be interesting whether or not they want to repeat what they did last year, or if they're going to move someone like Paul George and possibly have him land in Philadelphia. If that was the case, all of this Jimmy Butler to Philadelphia stuff is totally out the window, like I already believe it is, like we've already acknowledged on more than one occasion from Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports. It seems like more than likely he's going to remain in Miami, as again, although he most likely stays. And again, this quote is from Kurt Helin, so we're seeing this from two different people here. We're seeing it from Jake Fisher and Kurt Helin here, both writing on the situation going on. And again, hopefully Jimmy is not moved. I do not want to see Jimmy Butler moved. I think Jimmy is going to retire as a Miami Heat player. I think he's going to get another deep playoff run in Miami, at least one. Hopefully it is this next upcoming season as we get revamped going into this next season with a great offseason. Hopefully it all goes well. But again, just to call bullshit on what's really going on here. Again, if you see this article, do not jump the gun. If you're not even an article, but if you see the quote, don't jump the gun. They left out the most important piece of information, or two of the most important pieces of information, saying the rumblings are coming from other teams. It's not coming from an in-house really voice in Miami. And then they're also under the impression, as they write this, although he most likely stays. And it's just very frustrating to me that someone like NBA Central, such a trusted really source of information, would leave out those two pieces of information as they paraphrased the quote on their tweet. Again, no big deal. We did decipher it. We did open the article, and we did call bullshit. But again, that will be it for this episode of Heat Digest. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this entire situation. Is it just a bunch of fugazi in order to get clicks and a bunch of views on whether it be a tweet or an article or whatever it may be? But again, that'll be it for this episode of Heat Digest, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.